Welcome to The Forum, your modern-day coffee house, where ideas can be birthed, exchanged, and wrestled with. We celebrate questions, conversation, and reason as powerful tools to enlighten hearts and transform minds, shaping a new generation of thinkers, innovators, and pioneers. We're glad you're here, so pull up a chair and let's begin.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. A bit thin on the ground today, but it's really great to have you all here. So I was thinking about, did you all have a nice Christmas, by the way? Christmas and New Year? Yeah? My New Year's Eve consisted of a bottle of Prosecco, The Devil Wears Prada, and in bed by 9:30. I mean, really. And to be honest with you, when the fireworks started going off at 12, I was just like, this is just really rude. I was in a very deep sleep. When I was considering what to bring today, me and Claire have a bit of an in-joke when we're talking about content, because if we're struggling, we always say to each other, just talk about seasons. Always seems to be the thing we go back to. Just talk about seasons. And then I thought, well, okay, it's the 4th of January, so what should I talk about? New Year. And it's a bit of a cliche. And I think it was last year actually that I talked about the new year, and I talked a little bit about the whole idea of unrealistic expectations and how when you set such crazy objectives on yourself and then you don't fulfill them, it can almost be this vicious cycle of, I wanted to achieve this, I failed, and then you go into this kind of spiral of, I didn't achieve it, so then what do? Well, I'm not going to do it now, so you wait till January of the following year to then give it another go, and it's just this kind of endless cycle. You all know what I mean, right? Yeah. Now, as well as teaching dance, I work at a gym. Many of you know that. And between January and April, we have this period called the Golden Quarter. And the reason it's called the Golden Quarter, right, is because that's ultimately where the money is made, right? So we set all of our targets in that first 4-month period of how many people we're going to get through the doors. Because from April, although we still get new people coming through, we have a lot more people going out, so it's a lot harder to balance. Now, it's interesting because all those people who are coming through for many different reasons, but one of them is mainly they've probably eaten too many pies, too much turkey, too many crisps, too many chocolate bars, and ultimately, like the year prior, think, right, I need to, get back into the gym and lose some weight. When really all you have to do is just not eat as many pies, and then, you don't have to go to the gym. But you see, for me, growing up, the main objective was, you could argue just the same objective as a consistent cycle was, this was the main objective, the church, building the kingdom, preaching the gospel, and ultimately, this life was such a small element of what was, because all we were really thinking about was the billions of years would exist after this in the great by and by in eternity. Now, alongside that, I had quite an envy of the world outside of these four walls, and that I'd see people celebrating the new year with all these new objectives, this sense of joy, this sense of life, laughter, fun. And there was a sense of longing from me to have a part of that. On one side, I appreciated and felt secure in what I believed, but on the other side, it was like, I want a bit of that. And one of my favorite Disney films is Victor Hugo's Hunchback of Notre Dame. I think it is one of the most incredibly written stories ever, and well-produced movies as well. And you could argue my character, I actually sang the song Out There, which is sung by Quasimodo, this sense of safe behind these walls, I look out and long to experience something of the world. Now, like I said, the security was nice, it made me feel safe, but at the same time, I was aware that there was so much of the world outside that I didn't feel like I was a part of. Now, when then, and of course, a lot of you went through this journey with us, when then we went through the deconstruction process, it left this kind of gaping void that was very, very hard to deal with. And one of the reasons it was hard to deal with was because I realized my identity was so caught up in everything that I did within the church and within the four walls that when that was kind of taken away from me, I didn't really know who I was anymore. In effect, it was kind of like learning to walk all over again. And for those who grew up in a particularly what I would call, I don't really like using the word fundamentalist because I wouldn't say we were quite that extreme, but you could argue we were touching on that. When then that is kind of pulled from underneath you, it does leave this sense of emptiness that is really quite hard to navigate. Now, I mentioned the other week before Christmas when I sang, it was the first time I'd sang in quite a long time, that I'd had this particular issue that I'd been facing, but whilst I've had some injuries that have caused quite a problem, I'm also aware of a lot of my difficulty with singing and speaking in general has actually been from this sense of a lack of meaning to some degree. And I'm going to delve into that a little bit more today, but my mum said something quite profound about 2-3 years ago when I started to lose my voice. I started to become incredibly anxious and afraid by so many things that you would argue I had done all my life that was a natural thing to me, but all of a sudden, it just felt alien to me. And my mum kept saying to me, it drove me mad, by the way, and I disagreed with her. I told her she was wrong. Something deep inside me knew she was right, but again, you know what it's like with parents. She said this to me, when you find your voice, you will find your voice. And I'm like, come again? When you find your voice, you will find your voice. And what she meant was, when you find your voice, you will find your voice. Now, all of us have ways, they even say this in the medical world, every person has a way of manifesting their stresses. Each biological disorder, they often say, is linked to a particular type of stress reaction in your body. Now, my mum, her stress reaction was always with her voice, and, you know, I am her bloodline. It's interesting that it seems to be that mine is exactly the same. But what I wouldn't accept was that my inability to release sound and to speak and to sing was actually this sense of my inner being not really knowing what it was anymore. And it's only been really in the last few months where I've started to draw in on that. And I don't know if you can all hear, I'm actually sounding far more clear in the way that I'm able to deliver how I speak, which really is quite freeing. Now, when that void happens, whatever may create that void, because we all come from different backgrounds and walks of life, we all then start looking for something to fill it, because it's not very comfortable. Now, you've heard the term, there's a God-shaped hole. Yeah, we've all heard it, there's a God-shaped hole. And again, a lot of my talks last year was talking about the world is trying desperately to find ways of filling this void that they have, whether it be through religion or all different types of things. The question I'd like to ask you this morning is that void ever supposed to be filled? Now, that may sound, what? That sounds quite negative, but hear me out. Now, I'm very cautious of time this morning, right? Because I've got a little thing I'd like you to do around the table, so I really want you to get you chatting about some of these ideas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through some of these thoughts that I've had. If I feel like I can't get through it, I'll just shut up talking and just hand it back to the tables and we can come back to it another time. But in the Western world, we're so concerned and so caught up with this idea that our lives should be meaningful, this idea that they should make sense. You could even argue that the whole idea of mental health, which is a big thing now, like, you know, the whole idea of therapy and finding out who you are and the meaning behind your existence, the mental health of an individual depends on having purpose in life and finding that you yourself have meaning. Now, this is fairly easy to preserve, and even going back to what I was saying before about when I believed and lived a particular life that I thought was true and solid and secure, it's very easy to preserve that sense of meaning and purpose whilst ever it's not disrupted by chaos or catastrophe. Now, some of you in this room will know what I mean here, but when life doesn't follow a particular course that you'd expected it to take, and all sorts of twists and turns hit you, and I mean catastrophic twists and turns, where literally we're talking about loss, everything that you may have planned and that has given you security is completely thrown up in the air. And it's in those moments you start questioning, what is this all about? What do I mean? What's the purpose of life? Does that all make sense to you? You'll have all walked your own journey with that. So when you think your life has a particular direction, you even look at it, don't you? It's like we grow up, we go to college, we find a partner, we plan getting married, we have children, we X, Y, Z. There's this kind of idea of what life should look like. And when you don't take that course, some people are almost shocked. It's like, well, have you not done X? You're getting on a bit. You know, the whole, for women, biological clock. Well, There's certain expectations of what should be achieved at particular points in the process of life. Now, here's the issue. If your sense of self is tied to those things, for example, if your sense of meaningfulness is tied to ticking all those boxes, and then something hits you that stops you being able to tick all those boxes, and your self is tied to achieving those things, what do you then feel when those things start to crumble around you? Now, if I was to use the word meaningless or purposeless, they sound like really negative words, don't they? I've said it before, there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes, meaningless, everything is meaningless. We were taught that that was really, really, really bad, because the idea that there was this chasm or void, well, no, we know what the truth is. You know, God fills our lives with joy and peace and all of that kind of thing. They're kind of almost like swear words, this sense of, well, don't be negative, don't be nihilistic. They're bad words to use about life. But you see, Western thought and Eastern thought can be quite different in the way that they view life. So there are certain views of thought in China and Japan that think of the word purposeless and meaningless not as a negative connotation, but rather the opposite. They view them as being joyous and positive. There's an old Chinese text that uses this expression. If purpose can be used to achieve purposelessness, then the very thing has been grasped, and that thing is the whole purpose of life itself. I'll read that again. If purpose can be used to achieve purposelessness, then that thing has been grasped, and the thing is the meaning of life itself. Now, when we hear the word purposelessness, we think, well, it can't be grasped. I can't get my head around it. So then the question is, what do we mean by purpose or meaning? Because we can use these words all the time. You know, well, I want my life to have purpose. I want my life to have meaning. But what do we actually mean by that? Well, just basically, purpose is the intent to do something for a future result. So when we say something like, I'm going to the grocery store, sounds so American then, to the supermarket to get food, the purpose is we are going to get food. If you're going down to the supermarket to purely walk around aimlessly, you have no purpose. Now, I'm convinced that people go to the supermarket to walk around with no purpose. That's a whole different conversation. You should be going to the supermarket with a purpose, and that is to get groceries. So what about meaning? Meaning is simply the value that we apply to our experiences. Now, purpose and meaning give us a sense of certainty and order. You see, humans don't do well with these giant voids because it represents a kind of uncontrollable, unknowable chaos, and we don't like chaos. We want things to be recognizable. We like the known. This is one of the reasons why religion is so popular, because it's a set of rules, creeds, and ideas that, to some degree, whether they're true or not, is not the point. It gives us a sense of security in that, well, at least I know exactly where everything fits. And so one of the dominant ways in which a person can say that their life has meaning is that it has order. My life has meaning because it has order. But get this, and I was talking to Danny about this before I came up today. If the order of life is taken too far, get this, we then move into a kind of meaninglessness which we call monotony. Now, I don't know whether any of you get this. The day-to-day sludge of life, the sense of the mundane, the saying the same things to people, the seeing the same people do the same things, the same experiences, that is order. But do any of you find yourself feeling frustrated at how monotonous and mundane that in itself can become? I find sometimes it frustrates. I'm just like, not the same words, not the same expression. I'm convinced sometimes I'm in a computer game. Because, it's like people saying the same words and doing the same things at the same time almost kind of becomes robotic. Now, the question then has to be asked. We almost then need a disorder and a fluidity to give life some sense of order. We need to embrace the nonsense in order to make things really feel meaningful. Now, that was a bit of a mouthful, but what we're saying is true order found in the nonsense? Do we need chaos as an essential element of life? Now, in the Western world, we tend to emphasize order. And again, Jordan Peterson tends to really focus on this idea that life is really found when we find meaning and order and purpose. And again, there is truth in that, but hear me out. We are always pushing for things to make sense. We are always trying to control the world and make it obey us, and therefore make it orderly. Now, interestingly here, this is one of the big contrasts between, for example, conservatism and liberalism. Conservatism is desperately trying to conserve order because it is terrified of what freedom might represent. And liberalism says freedom is great because it allows people to experience wonderful things within the chaos of life, try things out and explore. Well, for people who can't stand chaos, they look at that and think, that's really scary, don't let it happen. Let's have all these wonderful packaged boxes and lines that make us all feel secure. But within the process of that, life gets stifled. Now, science itself studies for answers within nature. The study of natural order and how it occurs. But to a considerable extent, in Far Eastern teachings, especially within Buddhist thought, the emphasis goes the other way. There is an emphasis not so much on the beauty of order as to the beauty of a certain kind of disorder and nonsense. Now, for those who love to have everything controlled, this will be stressing you out. So let me ask you this question. What do rocks represent? What do trees represent? What do mountains represent? Do they have a meaning? Do they symbolize something? Do they have a purpose in that they are intentionally working to produce a future result? Is a rock thinking, what is my future result? Is a tree thinking, what is my future result? Is a mountain thinking, what is my future result? Do the waves washing on the shore think, what is my future result? It's a question to be asked. Do they have any intention? Being consistently fascinated by the freedom of natural forms, from having to mean something, from having to make sense, kind of brings a sort of relief to us. Looking at a mountain saying, it has no sense of purpose, should bring you a sense of relief. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, consider the lilies of the field. Basically what it's getting at is, a lily is just a lily. It bees a lily. It is a lily. It doesn't think of any intent other than to be a lily. And so there's a Chinese saying, which is that the beauty of a mountain is that it is so much like a mountain. The beauty of the water is it's so much like water. Mountain gets mountain, water gets water. The meaning of a mountain is wonderful because it's so much like a mountain. Water is wonderful because it's so much like water. So what if human gets human, and being human is wonderful because it's so much like human? So maybe, just maybe, doing human really well is having no particular purpose, just strolling down the street looking at the sky, or sitting and twiddling your thumbs. This, in a way, is the pure expression of fullness, of profound contentment. It is in this void that you truly exist. Now, I teach dance. Have you all heard the song Dance There Wherever You May Be? I think it's a brilliant song. I think it's very profound. I don't like the song, I'd just like to add. I think it's profound. Dance there wherever you may be. Now, when I'm teaching dance, yes, there are certain objectives for certain people. But when you are actually dancing, you are not dancing to get anywhere, or you shouldn't be. You don't dance in order to get to the other side of the room. You dance to feel its magic. You dance to feel its joy. You dance to feel its energy. When you go to a concert, you're not sat there thinking, is it nearly the end? Well, some of you might be, but hear me out, right? Okay, you get my gist. You are thinking of the experience that you're having while you're listening. Now, I'd like to throw something in here. I'm a perfectionist. For those who study the Enneagram, which we're going to look at in a minute, I'm a type 1. Being a singer and a public speaker is not good as a type 1. It's incredibly difficult, and I'll tell you why. Also, as a dancer, when I get up to speak, sing, perform, do anything of that nature, all I am thinking about, and I'm being genuinely true when I say this, all I think about is getting off afterwards and assessing myself as to whether the performance was flawless or not. Now think about that, it's quite tricky. So we talk about embracing things and living in the moment, but for me, my obligation is to get to the end quickly, finish it quickly, and assess, can you say that you did that perfectly? Now, the sad reality of that is, first of all, the answer is usually no, but you then lose the joy of what it is that you're doing. And that's a really sad place to be. And sadly, and again, hear me out here, people suffocate their talents because of this, because they are so afraid or so bothered about the assessment that they will give themselves at the end, that they're not really enjoying the experiences that they can bring to people. And I know even in myself, I have crushed myself because of this desperate need to attain certain levels, that in the process of it, I've not really enjoyed the experience of what it is that I can bring. And I guess you could argue my objective or my resolution for 2026 is to start being more in the moment of what I'm doing and enjoy the process of now rather than what you feel about it afterwards, if that makes sense. So I'll see how that goes. Embracing the void is exactly where we find meaning. That's where we find the beauty. We don't fight with it. We don't try and make something of it. It's just what it is. Now, our language is so revealing. We looked a lot at this when we looked at the idea of translation and language before Christmas. You've heard of the thing, shall we make something of this? I want to make something of this. Now, you could argue even that whole term is quite a hostile approach to life, because what we're saying is things aren't how I want them to be. We have to create, we have to do. You even find terms like, what are we doing? Where are we going? What are we going to create? What's next? This whole idea. This constant idea that we're striving to do. But the idea is that we're forcing it to make sense. There's this idea that we're trying to manipulate our surroundings. We want to force order on it. And then to an extent, in that process, it completely loses its meaning and potential because it won't speak to us. So what is life itself? The mountains, the stars, the rivers, the trees, the earth, and our very selves. Are they supposed to be things that are consistently leading to something else? A mountain does mountain, a water does water. Why can't a human just do human? Mere existences and experiences, we're desperately trying to apply meaning to them. Where are we going? What are we doing now? What's the purpose of this? For example, what's the purpose of me speaking to you this morning? There is none. I'm just up here because I want to be, and I'm enjoying the process of speaking to you. It's the state of fulfillment in every single moment. We used to sing a song called Unwritten. It was a real popular song here. We used to do it all the time. I am unwritten, the pen's in my hand, the whole idea that we're undefined. I remember the whole idea of modern art. Have you heard about the blank white canvas that got millions, sold for millions or whatever? It used to really irritate me because I'm just like, what? I get it more now. This idea that you stare at a white canvas and the idea it's nothingness, it's meaningless, it's purposeless, but the idea that as you gaze into it, it just is what it is. And there's a certain sense of freedom in that. There's no expectation, it's blank, and the pen is yours. Now, I hope some of those points have made sense to you today, because what I'd like to do now is give you the opportunity to embrace your void. Now, each of us have a different void. How many of you heard of the Enneagram? We've talked about it a lot. Some of you will definitely know which type you are. Others may have never read the book, so you may be unfamiliar. But I have done a table. Woo! Now, I've got a funny story to say about this. That text is big, by the way, from what it was. We got down to about a size 2 at one point because I had so much information to put in it. And I thought, what am I going to do? I was trying to figure out, so I'll buy you all binoculars or something so you could read it. So I've shrunk it down. You do need to squint a little bit, but I've got everything that I wanted to get on there. Now, I want this to be a bit of fun, but remember, the prime objective is what I've just talked about. It's this sense of what is your void and how are you going to live in 2026 embracing that and finding meaning within it. So we'll just quickly whiz through them. We're only on the hour, so we've got a good half an hour to talk. So we have type 1 is the perfectionist or the reformer. The resolution would be better this year, more discipline, higher standards, fewer mistakes, finally do it right. Where does this come from? It's a deep fear of being corrupt, wrong, or morally flawed. If you relax, things will most certainly fall apart, starting with you. What's the void then? Here we go, guys. The void. Any type 1s? Okay. Hi, Heather. Our void, a world where there is no perfect standard, no final rightness, no moral scoreboard watching you. Here's the terror. If there's no right way, then what am I? Now, your health of embracing the void is this: letting go of the fantasy that goodness must be earned. Freedom comes when you accept that things are imperfect. When I'm singing, my voice might crack, so what? You can all hold me to that. Things are imperfect, and it's still okay. By the way, just to add in here, another reason why I would say the whole perfectionist thing is very difficult, particularly now in modern day culture. We live in a world with filters. We live in a world with systems that can edit sound. Let me just quickly say this to you. There was is it Money Long, the singer? You might have heard of her. She has an illness called lupus. Fabulous artist, great singer. She performed for the Grammys. She was so sick that she sung it purely live, no sound effects. She could barely get through it. Her voice cracked, she was strained. It was still a wonderful performance, but you could sense she was really struggling. It went out, we all heard it, a lot of the comments where you could tell she was sick, this, that, and the other. Within a week, it had been re-edited to remove all of the voice cracks. Every single note was perfect. They added auto-tune because there were so many negative comments that they had to make it perfect so it got the views that it needed. So they took a raw performance of someone delivering something and made it into something that wasn't real so people could stomach it. Now, if you think about it, did I tell you about the Love Island? People wrote to the channel to complain that the people on TV didn't look as perfect as they did online because they'd used filters. So we're living in this world whereby everything is seen through a filter that sets this level of expectation that is completely unrealistic, and we have to move away from that. So how does a type 1 rewrite their story? Or what is the question? What if you didn't need to justify your existence by being right? Boom. Number 2. Do we have any 2s? Woo! Go, Jenny. Default resolution. Be more available. Be more giving. More present. More indispensable. Where does this come from? It's the fear of being unwanted, unlovable unless you are needed. What's a type 2's void? Here's your void. It's a space where no one needs you, your care is no longer requested, and love isn't earned through usefulness. What's your terror? If I'm not needed, do I still matter? So what's the health in embracing the void, type 2s? Allowing yourself to be unnecessary and staying anyway. Freedom comes when you accept love without obligation, relationship without rescue, and worth that is no longer transactional. How do you rewrite your story? What if you didn't have to earn your place in people's lives? Do we have any type 3s? Woo! Type 3s. Default resolution. Level up. New goals, new metrics, new identity upgrades. Where does this come from? It's the fear of being worthless, invisible, or a failure. What's your void, type 3s? It's the void where there's nothing to accomplish, no audience, and no image to manage. What's your terror? If I stop performing, am I anything at all? What does embracing the void look like? Letting yourself exist without producing value. Freedom comes when you accept stillness without success, presence without progress, and identity without applause. How do you rewrite? Who are you when there's nothing to prove? Any type 4s? Default resolution. Find myself. More depth, more authenticity, more meaning. Where does it come from? It's the fear of being insignificant, ordinary, or emotionally abandoned. What's a type 4's void? It's a world where nothing feels special, no deep emotional narrative explains you. Life is just life. What's the terror? If there's no profound meaning, then I'm nothing special or unique. What does embracing the void look like? Accepting, I can't even say this word, accepting ordinariness without despair. Freedom comes when you accept meaning doesn't have to be dramatic, identity isn't a mood, and being alive is enough. And how do type 4s rewrite? What if life doesn't need to be meaningful to be worth living? Any 5s? None. It's not here. Kev, what's your default resolution? Learn more, master something, prepare better, understand life before engaging with it. Where does it come from? Fear of being overwhelmed, invaded, or feeling incapable. What's a type 5's void? It's a state where you don't know, you can't prepare, and understanding does not protect you. What's the terror? If I don't understand, I feel totally exposed. So what does embracing the void look like? Entering life without certainty. Freedom comes when you accept not knowing, emotional exposure, and participation without mastery. How do type 5s rewrite? What if you don't need to understand life to live it? Any 6s? I know some of us partners that are 6s. My dad's a 6. What's the default resolution? Get secure, better plans, better systems, better certainty. Where does it come from? The fear of being unsupported or unsafe in a dangerous world. What's the void? A place where there are no guarantees, authority can't save you, certainty doesn't exist. What's the terror? If no one has the answer, how will I survive? What does embracing the void look like? Trusting yourself amid uncertainty. So freedom comes when you accept anxiety without paralysis, risk without reassurance, and courage without certainty. How do we rewrite? What if courage comes before certainty and security? Last few, type 7. Any 7s? Default resolution. More life, more experiences, more options, more joy. Where does it come from? Now, by the way, if you're a type 1, this is where we go to when we need liberating. Where does it come from? The fear of being trapped, in pain, or deprivation. What's the void for a type 7? It's a moment where there's nothing to look forward to, no escape route. Pain must be fully felt. What's the terror for a type 7? If I stay here, it will consume me. What does embracing the void look like? Staying present with discomfort. Freedom comes when you accept limits, grief, and depth over stimulation. What does rewriting look for a type 7? What if you don't need to escape this moment at all? Challenger. Last two. Here we go. Type 8, the challenger. Default resolution. Take control. Be stronger. More decisive. Less vulnerable. Any type 8s, by the way? Type 8s? I saw a little. Be stronger, more decisive, less vulnerable. Where it comes from? Fear of being weak, controlled, or betrayed. Now, what's a type 8's void? Here we go. You don't have power, you can't dominate outcomes, and vulnerability is unavoidable. What's the terror? If I'm not strong, I will be destroyed. So what does embracing the void look like for you? Letting yourself be affected. Freedom comes when you accept dependence, softness, power that doesn't dominate. What does rewriting look for you? What if real strength doesn't require armor? And finally, any 9s? Ooh, quite a few. The peacemaker, the mediator. Default resolution, here we go. Keep the peace, less conflict, less disruption, less assertion. Where does it come from? The fear of disconnection and loss through conflict. What is type 9's void? Your presence causes tension. Your presence causes tension. Your voice matters, or separation is possible. For 9s, the fear of separation is the main thing. What's the terror? If I assert myself, I might disappear. So what does embracing the void look like? Risking disconnection for a real presence. Freedom comes when you accept conflict is survivable, your own priorities are important, an existence that takes up space. What does rewriting look like for you? What if your presence matters even when it disrupts? Boom. Now, I hope that's been helpful today. They're the types I'd like you to spend. Can we open the cafe again? If people want coffee and things like that, please do feel free. I'd like to use the last 20 minutes of today to focus on what the void feels like for you, where you feel like it came from, and what you feel you can do to really feel liberated in not putting so much pressure on yourself to fill that gap, allow it to be what it is, and truly find meaning and purpose in that void. I hope that's been helpful. Thank you very much, and enjoy your discussion around the tables.